this may or may not be a positive video because I'm talking about the new Line 6 HX1. So, what is it? What is the Line 6 HX1? Well, it's a multi-effects unit-ish. It's compact, it's the size of a single pedal. It has hundreds of effects, of which you can choose one at a time and have a variation of, basically. It's got all of the HX effects on it, but it doesn't have the amp modules. But here's the kicker. It takes the idea of the snapshots and lets you do a different version of whichever effect it is you're using. So if you've got a delay, you can hit another button and it will change the delay, and it's got a nice little fancy thing where it morphs into it. So what are the advantages of this unit? Well, it's small, it's certainly small. It can cover a lot of bases because it can do a lot of effects. It can do distortions, it can do pitch shifting, it can do delays, it can do modulation, you name it. If HX has got it, it can do it except for amp models. It doesn't do amp models. It has two switches. One switch will turn the effects on and off, and the other one will change the state of that to whatever other version it is that you set it up to be. So for instance, one thing you might do with it, you might set that other button, and incidentally it's called the Flux button, quite funky, and you could set that to change, for instance, your delay feedback or your delay times or your delay levels. You could use the Leslie speaker setup, and like a real Leslie does, it's got two speeds, it's got a slow speed and it's got a fast speed. You could change the speed of it, for instance, and that little other button will do that for you. You press both of them together and then you go into the mode where you can switch up and down between your different presets. It's got MIDI capability and it's stereo. Who's it aimed at? Well, I'm guessing it's aimed at the guy who wants the possibility of a few different effects and to be able to switch between them, but doesn't need multiples at once and has a small compact pedal board. That's what I'm guessing it's aimed at. But we'll come back to how useful and effective that is in a minute. But what's the reality of it? What's its place in the market? Because it does one thing at a time, and it has to go either in front of your amp or behind it. It's not something that you can put in front and behind. It's not something within a loop like that. So you place it where you want it. So if you've got it after your amps, you can't use distortions on it. So it's not a distortion thing. It's delays, modulations, reverbs, basically. If you put it in front, it's compressors, drives, that kind of deal. So in reality, you're only going to be able to use it for half of the things that it can do because you either put it in front or behind of your amp. Now, that brings us on to the reality of using something like this. Because if you want delays and reverbs, then you're going to go for something like the Blue Sky or the Timeline or the Boss do some great stuff, and you're going to put that in as your delay and your reverb. If you want modulation effects, then you put that in front. If you want something amazing that blows your mind and does all sorts of spacey things and with delays, reverb, modulation, etc., and pitch shifting, then you're going to probably want an H9 or an H90 now, which will do a great job of doing all of that because it's got algorithms that do multiple things at once. If you want distortions and drives in front, yes, you can switch between two states on one, but like most guitar players, well, I'm a typical guitar player that has a little bit on his board, and at the minute I'm just using all digital stuff. But I've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, wait for it, 6, and a Mojo that's on my board still. I've got loads of these things. How many drive pedals can you get for the price of an HX1? Well, I could get that one, and that one, and that one, and I can definitely get that one as well, and I can probably get one of these now as well. And we all know that one does everything. But multi-stomp pedals are nothing new. For instance, this little zoom pedal has one button on it, and you can program a few different things in there, and you can leave some of them on and then use that to toggle one thing on and off. So you can have an amp and a distortion and a drive, and you can click on that to turn your drives on and off, leave your reverbs on all the time, and that one's quite useful. Okay, it's old, but it's quite useful. Line 6 themselves even do the M5 pedal, which has multiple effects in it. You can choose one at a time, but they're the legacy effects. So in effect, this HX1 is the HX version of the M5, surely. So in reality, what is this unit in the Line 6 lineup? Well, you could say it's an HX version of the M5 pedal. You could say it's an HX effects, but with all but one or two buttons cut away and only does one thing at once. You could say it's an HX stomp, or a third of an HX stomp. But really, because it only does one thing at a time, it isn't. So how does it compare on price? If it's a third of an HX stomp, then maybe it's a third of the price would be reasonable, but I don't think that's reasonable to expect. An HX stomp, remember, can do 8 things at once. This can do 1. So, I don't know. Sweetwater, at the minute, I'm looking at US sites because I can't find it in the UK, but they want $299 for one, whereas for an HX stomp, they want $699. So it's just over double to get the stomp, but you've got to think to yourself, how much more do you get? Here's the thing. You could buy that, you could buy the HX1, but you could also go on eBay and get yourself a second-hand HX stomp for not much more than the price of this HX1. So have a think about that in comparison. Now, where is your money better spent? Do you get a second-hand HX stomp, which, to be fair, you can buy these things second-hand. They're pretty invincible and they very rarely go wrong. So you can probably buy it with quite a bit of confidence, or you can get a new HX1 and you can only do one thing at a time with it. That's the killer for me. You can do one thing at a time. So as far as value for money is concerned, yes, it does a lot of different things, but if you want to get the most out of it, and you don't want to be tapping up and down to scroll to find it, you're going to need something to control it with via MIDI, which means you're going to need a MIDI switcher at least, which means you've got other pedals anyway, and you've probably got drive, so you probably just want it to go behind. Is it the best solution to just go behind your amp? I don't know. If you've got a multi-effects processor, well, why would you need this that has one more effect for $300? You probably wouldn't. If you want to really chop and change what it's doing and go from one extreme to the other and have a range of stuff that it's doing, then you're going to need some kind of MIDI controller, because tapping up and down one preset at a time is going to take you forever in between songs. Something like that is too ridiculously big. There's a version of that you can get that does a great job, and Boss do a reasonable little one as well, but they're all way bigger than that and the HX1. So it sort of defeats the object, I think. Yes, there is a place for something that can do a few different things, but again, you need to control it, and that's the problem, is controlling it. If you've got a pedal that does one thing and you want to change it to do something else, you've got to press 2 buttons at once on it. Now, how many times do you then get that wrong, and instead of pressing it to turn it on, you press 2 at once because your feet are too big, you're too clumsy, you're busy looking at a microphone, looking at an audience and trying to find it with your foot. That 2 button press thing for me is absolutely fraught with problems, so I try and avoid it. So you control it with something else. The something else you want to control it with ends up being far bigger than the thing you're controlling anyway. So, I don't know, it's almost self-defeating. And yes, it's great to be able to have 2 versions of the same effect and switch between a long delay and a short delay, for instance. But then if you've got something like this, you can do all of that anyway, and you can actually have 3 scenes, and you can turn other things on and off as well. And you can have your reverbs and stuff like that still on whilst you're doing other things. I don't know, it just seems to me, bang for buck wise, yes, the HX1 is half the price new, but that does a lot more, an awful lot more. And yeah, you carry on saying that, this other thing does more than this other thing, but at the end of the day, you've got to figure out a point where it's worthwhile. Now that to me is worthwhile, especially if you can pick one up used. You pick these up used, they are an absolute bargain and do a lot of different things. The HX1, obviously you can't get it used at the minute. I don't know what the used market's going to be like, but then you might as well buy the M6, because it does a lot of the same things. And let's face it, Who's going to use a digital distortion if you're into small individual pedals? The chances are you're going to use your proper distortion pedals, your analog distortion pedals, in front of your amp or in front of your modeler, and then this behind. And if you're using a modeler, then, well, you might have the Strymon thing that doesn't do a lot of effects, but, you know, really, I'm not entirely sure of the value of this thing and its place in the market. I'm sure it's really, really good at what it does, because all the Line 6 effects are really, really good. But I'm not sure who needs it. Just my thoughts. If you've got some thoughts, don't be shy about commenting below. Tell me what you think. If this would be ideal for you, and it may well be, then let me know in the comments below. Tell me why, though. I'm really interested in why someone would buy that over this, especially when the second-hand prices of this are only a little bit more than the HX1. I don't know. Tell me what you think, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.